It's no secret that AI is transforming the world. Executives want to adopt it and investors want to capitalize on its efficiencies. But what happens when vendors misrepresent the functionality associated with AI tools, when they misrepresent what AI can do? That's what I want to talk about today. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney. For over 20 years, I have focused my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related agreements and litigating failed ERP projects in courts across the country. The artificial intelligence software market is already at $100 billion in annual revenue. By one count, there are more than 67,000 AI companies in the United States, and a lot of these companies have no products, they have no substantive work experience, but they are getting millions of dollars in investment. And what this leads to really is a scenario where artificial intelligence software vendors are trying to align their products and their services with marketing trends, really for the purpose of creating favorable buzz around their products. And while I think there's nothing wrong with that in general, I think when vendors misrepresent the features, functionalities, and capabilities of their artificial intelligence tools, they really do cross a line into fraud and into negligent misrepresentation. So what does it look like? What is, the industry term is AI washing. What does AI washing look like? Well, it looks a lot like fraud and negligent misrepresentation, certainly from a legal perspective. And I think some of the common patterns that we will see in the lawsuits that we deal with are vague claims like AI-powered, intelligent, autonomous. These vendors will use these terms without any concrete explanation of how the model is AI-powered, how it is intelligent, how it is autonomous. These terms are not regulated terms. Many times vendors will rebrand old technology and brand it as machine learning incorporates large language models, and really it's nothing more than kind of yesterday's technology with a new twist and a new buzzword associated with it. One of the things that we will see is hidden human work that is happening behind the scenes. I mean, it's almost like a Wizard of Oz scenario. One lawsuit that we're dealing with right now, we've got a scenario that involves robotic process automation, and the vendor could never get the functionality fully implemented. It never really worked. The functionality was supposed to analyze invoices and figure out what could be expensed, what couldn't be expensed, and it would have saved the client a lot of time with the built-in efficiencies with this particular tool. But the reality was that it didn't work. The vendor was pulling the wool over the client's eyes. They had a team offshored in the Philippines that was actually doing all of this work manually. And unfortunately, that's not an uncommon scenario. You've got inflated performance claims. You'll see things like near 100% accuracy. It eliminates all bias. It does not have any hallucinations. There's no independent ability to verify anything that the vendor is saying. I think if you're going to see in marketing material, documentation, slide decks, if they're full of buzzwords, that to me is a huge red flag that you're dealing with something that may not be fully baked. You've got artificial intelligence, Gen AI, LLMs, neural networks, whatever it is, but if they're not providing any clarity about how those pieces of functionality or technology address a business problem, then I think that is going to be a large red flag. But really, I think this is caveat emptor, right? And one of the things that you've got to do as a consumer in this space, if you're looking to adopt some sort of artificial intelligence tool, you've really got to do the due diligence. And I think so many of our clients, they're looking at AI as the new shiny object. They don't want to get left behind. They're concerned about what their competitors are doing. They see all these amazing things that the technology is capable of, and they want to get on board. But many of them will do that without a fully formed business case. And I think that is just a recipe for disaster. If you don't have a reason to implement the technology, then you don't really need, in my view, to be implementing the technology. Just to say that you've got AI or an AI-forward company, that you're a company that really utilizes artificial intelligence in a substantive way, that just does not make any sense. And I think you're about to open your wallet and get into a scenario that's not going to be a good scenario for you. we had one client come to us the other day, and they were really hung up on implementing a piece of AI functionality that was going to essentially be a note taker for all of their meetings across their organization. And we essentially pushed back on that, and I said, look, this doesn't make a lot of sense from a confidentiality standpoint. Doesn't make sense from a trade secret standpoint. What about conversations with your legal counsel that are supposed to be privileged? What does that do to the attorney-client privilege? I mean, the client agreed and said, well, I don't think we've really fully thought this out, and we've been taking notes with pen and paper, for decades, and it's worked pretty good. And I think, to me, that's a good example of adopting technology for technology's sake. And I think when you do that, you're really headed down the wrong path. And the reality is, I mean, these pieces of AI functionality that you're trying to implement, they really can run the gamut, obviously, right? It can be some kind of not real substantive piece of technology that is really mission critical to your business, but more and more, you've got your ERP functionality, your ERP system that is really then going to incorporate elements of artificial intelligence. It's going to have these AI tools layered over them, and that kind of interoperability, compatibility, integration, those issues become incredibly complicated, and they can be incredibly expensive. And so, this becomes then a software implementation project with all of the headaches that a software implementation or a digital transformation can bring. But then there's this added level of technological complexity associated with it, where you may not understand what is on the back end of that. You don't have the ability to verify what that artificial intelligence tool really can do, and you really can't buy into the hype. I mean, I think as an educated consumer, you have to do the due diligence. You've got to look at this AI functionality. You've got to make sure that you're attending software demonstrations of that functionality. You've got to understand that what the history of the company behind that AI is, and it's simple things, checking references, doing the due diligence, software demonstrations, software scripts, site visits, those kinds of things that you would do in connection with a normal software implementation project, I think become much more important in connection with certain types of artificial intelligence functionality that you're going to be implementing into your business. And so what do you look for as you go down this path of due diligence? And I think you're going to want to ask about data and limitations. You're going to want to have an understanding of what data is used in connection with that artificial intelligence tool. You want to know who owns the data. You want to know how it is collected. You want to know how often the model is updated. You need to ask explicit questions. You want to know, where does this AI functionality tend to fail? What are its known limitations? How does the vendor handle errors? Is it an open and transparent system? If there are hallucinations, do you have insight into why the tool is hallucinating? You want to look for as much evidence as you can. And I think, while software demonstrations are a good step in the evaluation process, you can't really end there. You want to request case studies. You want to look at concrete metrics. You want to, if you can, look at independent benchmarks, certainly, site visits, third-party evaluations of that tool. I mean, you've really got to arm yourself with as much due diligence and arrows in your quiver as you possibly can. And then I think you're going to want to have an understanding of who this company is, right? Who's involved in connection with the development of that AI tool. I mean, is the organization using data scientists? Are there engineers? Do they have a track record of developing products like this? Alternatively, is it a purely marketing driven AI story? I mean, if it is something like that, then I think you really have a problem on your hands. I mean, you've got to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, and you don't want to become a victim of the artificial intelligence hype, and this desire to chase these shiny objects so that you're not left behind. I think if you implement a reasoned, well-documented process, engage in reasonable due diligence, I think you're going to put yourself in the right direction. If you have any questions about anything in this video or anything in any of our other videos, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you and get you pointed in the right direction.